Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's lesson, whereby we're going to be continuing with what we were discussing in the last lesson. If I remember very well, in the last lesson, we were talking about like poetic devices, whereby we talked about similes, we talked about metaphors, and we talked about a symbolism and a number of things. And I remember we also talked about try to give relevant examples so that we could understand the poetic devices better. So in this lesson, we're just going to continue from where we left in the last lesson. The first thing that we're going to talk about is imagery. So when we're talking about imagery, we're talking about using words to create a picture in the mind. So what happens with the human mind is whenever something is described to you, or whenever a description is given you about a certain something, automatically your mind creates a picture, right? For example, if I say now, I saw a red big car, automatically now, like that red big car, there is a red big car that has been created in your mind, right? It's there. Something creates that picture in your mind. So that's what we refer to as imagery. It's a very effective way of explaining and giving this and emphasizing a point. It can actually be very effective. So poets normally use this type of device so that they emphasize a point and you become a part of whatever that is being explained when you read something that is descriptive. And moving on, another thing, okay, so maybe before we move on to free maybe we can try to give in your mind, you can try to create imageries that you think maybe try to describe something. So any descriptive language that is trying to describe, for you to create a picture in your mind, is what we refer to as imagery. And then in poets again, we have what we call free verse. When you're talking about free verse, as the name implies, like it's free, right? It's free there, and there are no what do you call it? There are no restrictions or things like that. So we're talking about poetry that follows no rules, just about anything goes, right? That kind of poetry whereby it's anything goes. So this does not mean that it uses no devices. It just means that this type of poetry does not follow traditional conventions such as punctuation, capitalization, rhyme scheme, sorry, rhyme and meter etc. It doesn't follow those things. So let's read this poem, which is a free verse, which is written without any ETS devices, but it just means that this type of poetry does not follow any traditional conventions such as punctuation. You can punctuate anyhow, and capitalization, you can do it anyhow as the poet wishes. So we want to read this poem and try to see so that we can be familiar with a free verse, so that we can know what we mean when we say free verse. Fog. The fog comes on little kite feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. There is no rhyme. If you take a closer look, you see that there is no rhyme, there is no rhythm, there is no meter. So this is just a free verse whereby you can write anyhow. Probably if you don't have much information about poets, how to write poetry and things like that, probably the first poem that you write is going to be a free verse, because you don't know like the convention, the traditional conventions that should be followed, things like the punctuation, the capitalization, the rhyme scheme, and things like that. You don't know. So probably the first poem that you write is will be a free verse. And then another thing that we would want to talk about in this lesson is allusion. So when we're talking about an allusion is a reference to another piece of literature or to history, right? For example, she has Diane's wig. from Romeo and Juliet, whereby you quote like some things from other texts, from other literature pieces, maybe from other books, from other history books or things like that. That's what we refer to as an allusion. So the three most common types of allusion refer to mythology, the Bible, and Shakespeare's writing, right? So as we all know, Shakespeare is the father of poetry and is the father of literature. So yeah, so most of the times when poets write their poems, they often refer to as Shakespeare's writing or the Bible. I think if you want, you can research on poems that were if allusions are like from the Bible, and also mythology is also another type of allusion that can be referred to in poetry. And moving on to rhythm, right? I'm sure we've been talking about rhythm, 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 and you're wondering what is rhythm. So now I want to talk about rhythm. Rhythm is the flow of the beat in a poem, right? Is the flow of the beat in a poem. It gives poetry a musical feel, can be fast or slow, depending on mood and subject of poem. You can measure rhythm in meter by counting the beats in each line. Okay, let's have a look of an example of a rhythm. The Picket Fence by David McCall. So the picket fence. Give it a lick is the picket fence. Give it a lick is the picket fence. Give it a lick, it's a licket fence. Give it a lick, give it a lick, give it a lick with a ricket stick. Pickety, pickety, pickety pick. So I think you see like the rhythm that I'm talking about. It's normally found in song lyrics. If you take a look at song lyrics, you see this kind of rhythm whereby the poet or the writer uses in order to create that kind of rhythm. If you read this, you see that there is a rhythm. The picket fans, give it a lick. It's the picket fans. I'm sure you see the kind of rhythm that we are talking about. So the rhythm in this poem is fast to match the speed of the stick striking the ferns. So this kind of rhythm now is fast. As you can see, the picket fence, the picket fence. So when you are reading it, you can't help it. You have to be fast. So that's the rhythm that we are talking about. So at this juncture, maybe we should just know this. Maybe let's have another example of a rhythm example. Where are you now? When the night begins to fall and the sky begins to glow, you look up and see the tall city of the light begins to grow. It rolls in little golden squares. The lights come out, first here, then there, behind the window panes, as through 1,000,000,000 bees had built their golden hives and honeycomb above you in the earth. So the rhyme in this poem is slow to match the night gently falling and the light slowly coming on. And okay, we can move in. Okay, I think we have talked about this. Okay, this is just a mistake in the slide. This was supposed to be up there when we're talking about imagery. These are just examples of how imagery can be through the five senses, blah blah blah. So we're not going to get much into this. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is line and stanzas. You should know how do you identify a line in a poem, and you should know what is a stanza in a poem. For this example that we have here, most poems are written in lines, right? Most poems are written in lines, and a group of lines in a poem is called a stanza, the one that we call a paragraph. But when it becomes a poem, we call them a stanza. So stanzas separate ideas in a poem. They act like paragraphs. Okay, I think as I have already highlighted. So the poem has two stanzas, right? So this poem that in particular has two stanzas. A blue day, a blue jay, and a good beginning. A blue jay is a line, and then when we see the paragraph like is called a stanza, and I think the notes are clearly showing the stanza. Then free verse, we talked about it already. Then we can also talk about the mood, right? If I ask you like the mood, I think you understand the mood. Mood is the atmosphere or emotion in the poem created by the poet. It can be happy, it can be angry, silly, sad, excited, fearful, or thoughtful. So it depends on what the poet is writing about, right? For example, if a poet is writing about a sick person, how the person was suffering and crying, definitely that mood can be happy or excited or what. It can't be. So it depends with what the poet is writing about. So that would determines the mood of the poem and the emotion that the poet is giving towards that topic. And then so poets use words and images to create a mood. Authors purpose helps determine mood, right? Okay, we're going to see like examples, yeah. So mood, barefoot day. Okay, barefoot day is by Rachel Field. In the morning, very early. That's the time I love to go. Barefoot, where the fern grows. Kelly, and grass is cool between each toe. On a summer morning, oh, on a summer morning. That is when the birds go by, up the sunny slopes of earth, and each rose is a butterfly, or a golden bee to wear. And I am glad in every toe. Such a summer morning, oh, such a summer morning. So the mood in this poem is happy. So maybe you can think about what clues in the poem can you use to determine the mood? Like what clues in this poem can you actually use to determine like the mood of the poem, right? The fifth, then maybe I just give you one example that up the sunny slopes of earth, and each rose has a butterfly. This creates a happy mood, right? This actually creates like that happy mood that we're talking about. So on a summer morning, oh, on a summer morning, right? It creates the mood that we're talking about. And let's read a Med song. I shut my door to keep you out. Won't do, okay, sorry, won't do not good. We stand and shout, won't listen to. A thing you say, just time you took yourself away. I lock my door to keep me here until I'm sure you disappear. So you see that this poem is an angry mood. The poem is creating that angry atmosphere. And then we can go ahead and talk about a mood. The poem. I loved my friends. You went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends. Soft as it began, I love my friend by Langton Hughes. So the mood in this poem is sad. I'm sure you can actually see that it's a very sad poem. Okay. So another thing that we can talk about is diction. When you're talking about diction, we're just talking about the choice of words that is used by the poet. So diction refers to the language of a poem and how each word is chosen to convey a precise meaning. So poets are very deliberate in choosing each word for its particular effect. It's important to know the denotions and connotations of the words in a poem, not to mention their literal meaning too. So it's very important to know the denotions and connotations of the words in a poem. It's actually something that's very important that can help you when you want to understand the poem. And then let's read this as an example. Words strain, cracks and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay, the imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. um, the choice of harsh words like burden, and straight. They're like harsh words. So that's how we comment on diction. If you are told to comment on the language, then definitely you're also supposed to comment on the diction. That's the choice of words that was used by the poet. And then one of the last, tone. Tone is the attitude writers take towards their subject, right? So you should ask yourself, would this poem have a different meaning for the reader if the tone was changed, right? So if a tone is changed, definitely the poem, the poem would have like a different meaning for the reader, right? Let's look at this. There's this that I like about hockey, My Lad, by John Kiran. So there's this that I like about hockey. Think you agree that I'm right. Although you may get an occasional rap, there's always good fun. Okay, sorry. There's always good fun in the fight. So toss in the puck for the players is set. Sing ho for the dash in the enemy net. And ho for the smash as the challenge is met. And hey for a glorious night. Author's attitude towards hockey. So we're just talking about author is speaking it like an author's towards hockey. So in yellow, that's where you see what we want to see the tone, that we see the tone of the person. So don't confuse tone and mood. It often like confuses, right? Tone and mood are two different aspects of a poem. So tone is the author's or the poet's attitude, right, towards his or her subject. Then mood is how the poem makes the reader or the listener feel. So that's the difference between the two, tone and mood, because many people often like confuse the two, tone and mood. Then reading for meaning. So when you read a poem, you don't just read it. You have to find like there's always a hidden meaning in poems, right? So when you read a meaning, you should read. Sorry, when you read a poem, you should read to get the meaning, right? So to find meaning in a poem, readers ask questions as they read. There are many things to pay attention to when reading a poem. Please note. Then title provides clues about topic, mood, speaker's author, author's purpose, and things like that. So you should take note of the title and try to understand like the mood of the speaker and the author's purpose, and rhythm. Fast or slow, you should ask yourself why. Why is the rhythm fast? Why is the rhythm slow? And sound devices. What effects do they have? Right? You should ask yourself what effects do they have? And then imagery. What pictures do we make in our minds? Ask yourself that question when you're reading a poem. And then figures of speech. What do they tell us about the subject? You should ask yourself that also. Who is speaking? That's also another question that you should ask yourself. Is it the poet? Is it the character? Is it one voice or more? You should ask yourself that. And then author's purpose. Sending messages, sharing feelings, telling story, being funny, being descriptive. Those are what you should ask yourself, that what is the author's purpose? And then mood. Is it happy? Is it sad, angry, thoughtful, silly, excited, frightened? What is happening in the poem? So remember, to make meaning, readers must make connections and tap into their background knowledge and prior experiences as they read. So I think this is like the end of the poetic devices, like the ones that we talked about in the last lesson and the ones that we talked about in these lessons. So you should understand these things and be able to identify them in the poem, right? So that's how that's the introduction of poetry for you. And I think we'll get into detail on poetry maybe in the next year or years to come. But at this juncture, you should just know like the how to identify poetic devices and how to understand a poem. So with that, if you have any questions, you are free to ask me maybe in my inbox or on the site. So if on the course site or anything, if you have any question. So if you guys have any questions, like what I said, you're free to let me know. So for today, I think we can end here. Have a great day and enjoy.